we got ourselves a post-long run shuffle today. It's not that everything hurts, kind of does. It's more that pushing any harder than this after doing such a big effort, it's just not worth it. 6:15, 6.5-minute kilometres on the upper end of what I should be doing right now, if anything. But let's talk about yesterday. So a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago maybe, Sean, the founder of the 79 Club, put out feelers for anyone who wanted to join a Sunday long run up in trail country, up in the hills, sort of Peak District, something like that. Saddleworth Moor it ended up being. And obviously my hand shot straight up. Kudos, same. Sean had offered to drive if we got to his, but I sort of looked at it. We were going to Marsden. Marsden's a place that I know pretty well. It was the middle ground for meeting one of my best mates back when I lived in Huddersfield and he lived in Manchester. Given back then we were meeting to try and do 15 pints, not 15k, I thought it's only about half an hour on the train, whereas it's sort of half an hour over to Sean's and then almost a 40-minute drive. So I thought I'll get the train and I'll go up a little, looked at when the trains fell, go up a little bit earlier. I'll do my old canal run. So when I first got into running, I lived in Huddersfield, and the long run was a run on the canal to Marsden. And so I thought, oh yeah, I'll get up, get early. And then Kuda said, oh well, if it's better to get the train, I'll come with you. So then I thought, well, what if we got the earlier train, the earliest train on a Sunday, 9:45? Give us like a little bit of time. We can do the canal route. We can do a bit more than the canal route. Brilliant. Let's do that. And then came to a couple of days before, and I looked up. So at this point, Kudus was sort of smarting from an injury and wasn't even sure he was going to come at all. And so I thought, well, let's make a day of it. I don't like roping anyone in to like ridiculous runs. Just because I can sort of do it, no matter how much it hurts me. I don't want to put anyone else through that necessarily. But yeah, Kuda sort of came round, he was repaired, and I'd looked at the route to get to Marsden from here. I've always sort of wondered if I could run back to my old house in Huddersfield. Maybe one day. So I'd sort of had this idea to just run all the way there. And so I looked at it, 28 kilometres, not the most picturesque, not the most scenic route ever, but an interesting one, a hilly one that was going to be something of a challenge, especially when you combine it with the fact that we're doing sort of 15, 16k once we got there. I sort of floated this on Saturday, because we could run there, only 28k. And he sort of gave me a bit of the affirmative, yeah, maybe. And then that evening, he messaged me saying, should we do this ultra then? And I had the screenshot ready to send him from Google Maps. Let's do it. So, not that early actually, we set off, we leave Manchester on the canal, and then it's like one road to Oldham, and then once you're in Oldham, you're out the other side, and it's just one straight road. No, straight's the wrong word. It's one road that loops and winds and twists all the way up to Marsden. It ended up being closer to something like, I want to say 30 kilometres on the dot. We we scrapped the maps at the end once I seen the canal. The canal sort of goes under the hills, so once it emerges from the hills, I sort of spotted it, and we got down onto that, and that's a beautiful bit of canal, that Huddersfield Narrow Canal, and yeah, nice and flat then really. We got there an hour and a quarter early, so we carried on. We just went along the canal towards Huddersfield, and by the time we met Sean and Chris, who were joining us, we were at 40 kilometres. I think so at one point Kuda suggested we convinced them to sort of round it up to 20k, and that would give us a 60k run. And I think he thought I was sort of wussing out, because I sort of went, let's see. Because what I knew and he didn't know was the route that Sean had sort of suggested. We're talking knee deep in bogs, we're talking pushing your knees to get up hills, we're talking sliding down the other side. It's tough. No matter how slow you go, there's walking involved. No matter how slow you go, it is tough. And I didn't think I'd be up for much more than that. 56 kilometres in the end. Road running, canal running, 1,000 metres of climb, something like 500 or 600 of downhill. It was a tough day, but the tougher those challenges, the more you get out of them, the more you test yourself, the more you just realise that it's actually just your head standing in the way. You might need a little bit more fitness, you might need to train a little bit, but if we can do that, maybe you can do a 5k. If we can do that, maybe you can do a 5k. You know, you just walk a little bit, find your pace, just don't stop. I remember, it's not the first ever run I ever did, but I remember the first time I sort of went out by myself, you know, laced up my trainers and walked out the door. It was a shit day for me. My house had just been burgled. I sort of felt unsafe in my own home. I went and stayed with my mum and dad for 2 days. Middle of the week, none of my friends from back home were about. I had nothing else to do. I felt out of control. I felt like that, yeah, control had been taken away from me. That these people had broken into my home while I was in it. And for some reason, the idea of running, just getting out there and being by myself, just called to me. That day, easily one of the hardest runs I've ever done. 2 kilometres-ish. And I had to walk back home. I could not take another step running. I had to turn back and walk back home. One of the toughest runs I've ever done, genuinely. And that difficulty, it scales down. The fitter you get, the more you do this. Yesterday's run, as tough as it was, nowhere near as hard as that first 2k. There's got to be a lesson in there somewhere. That was back 15 years ago now. I didn't get into running seriously until a couple of years ago, just before lockdown, and I had my first everyday challenge when lockdown kicked in, and it cut me off before I got to the month because I wasn't sure if I was allowed to go out for a run. We've all got these challenges, and I think if you think a run is difficult but you've done it, don't let anyone take that away from you. Because if I'd let those thoughts get in, you know, I'm talking in a world where that first run, Instagram didn't exist. fuck me, that makes me feel old. That first run, Instagram wasn't about. And I don't think anyone was trolling on MySpace in the same way that you might get it on Instagram and TikTok these days. But if I'd listened to the voices in my head, if I'd listened to the people around me say about, my knees or whatever, I was a bigger guy then. If I'd listened to those voices, well, I wouldn't be where I am now. If I'd have given up because that 2K was hard, I wouldn't be running like I did yesterday. I just think you need to improve your self-narrative. I think you need to be kind to yourself and you need to take the wins where they come. The other story is after my arm break, that first run back was 2K again. Another, probably one of the top 10 hardest runs I've ever done. I was nearly, be honest about this now, I was nearly in tears on that run. Because I didn't think I'd ever get back into running. I didn't think that option was open to me anymore. I thought my running career was over. This was from an arm break. But I'd sat drugged up on a chair for 3 months. My legs didn't want to work. The idea that I might fall over and just snap that arm again, undo all that hard work. I was in bits that day. But I did it. I had to walk a lot of it. But I did it. I did 2K. And you know what? That journey back to health was a lot easier than the 10 years that it took to get to health in the first place. I don't know what the message really is, but I think it's got to be something to do with embracing the journey and being kind to yourself. I've got 10 more K to do. You sign off there. Laters.